This is an NBC News Special Report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good evening. We are coming on the air with breaking news right now. Former FBI Director James Comey has just been indicted on 2 counts, according to a senior Justice Department official. It comes after NBC News learned this week that the DOJ was weighing whether to charge Comey over allegations that he lied to Congress. Tonight, we understand the 2 counts are false statements and obstruction. This would be the first time a former director of the FBI has ever been indicted in the history of our country. I want to bring in NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett. Laura, a lot happening in the last few minutes. Let's get our viewers up to speed here. Do we have an understanding of what this entitled and what this included in testimony to Congress?
Yes, our best understanding of what this actually is, Tom, is that Comey was asked by Senator Cruz about whether he had ever authorized a leak to the media. He said that he had not. He was stemming back to some testimony that he had given years prior. He wanted to make sure he stood by that testimony. He said that he did at the time. He has always denied any wrongdoing, ever denied leaking to the press. And so we believe that's what this would be about. Again, that happened in September of 2020. And so you wonder, why bring those charges now? They have a 5-year statute of limitations that would run out this Tuesday. And so we believe that all of sort of the focus around this right now is happening because prosecutors want to make sure they are within that window. And the actual Attorney General herself, Pam Bondi, who has come under increasing pressure from this president about going after his perceived enemies, made it official tonight, even though we have not seen an indictment, saying no one is above the law and that this indictment reflects the department's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We have reached out to Comey. We have not yet received a statement from his attorney or anyone representing him on his behalf. But I should again say that he has always denied that he has never engaged in any leaks and never had engaged in any misconduct.
And we want to be very upfront with our viewers. A lot of this information has happened in just the last 5 minutes. A lot of this is coming out on X, along with our reporting and confirmation with our sources. From our understanding, the interaction, and he was asked by Senator Ted Cruz during that hearing in Congress whether he had leaked or he had been a source or he had authorized a source. Multiple times, James Comey says no. But his deputy, Andrew McCabe, sort of didn't agree with him and said he had been authorized to leak.
And that's what makes this entire circumstance so unusual, because McCabe is obviously somebody that has also come under a fair amount of criticism and attention from this president. So if the only source of information that James Comey is lying is Andrew McCabe, that would be an extraordinary moment to have McCabe be on the witness stand saying something that the president would obviously wish was true. Again, whether or not this goes to a jury is a different question than whether you get a grand jury to indict. We should make it clear to our audience, we have not seen an indictment. The standard for what can get a grand jury to indict is much different than reasonable doubt, which wouldn't in a regular trial. The grand jury process is secretive. Not even the defense attorneys in the room. It's a process entirely controlled by the prosecutors. What evidence they put forward, what evidence they don't put forward, all in their discretion.
I want to bring in NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, because Kelly, as we know, there's a second part to this, right? Walk our viewers through what's happened in the Eastern District of Virginia over the past couple of weeks and why that's so important to this case.
Well, Tom, there has been turmoil, there has been disagreement, and there has been the hand of the White House, with the president choosing one of his own former personal attorneys, Lindsay Halligan, a woman who has experience in insurance law but has never prosecuted any cases. She had been working in the White House as well, placing her in a key position of power as the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. That comes after a sudden resignation that happened just a few days ago, where a long-time attorney who had a lot of experience in this area stepped down from his position. The president said he was fired, and there is apparently dispute over this kind of case and perhaps others where he did not believe there was sufficient evidence to pursue an indictment against Comey. And that's the kind of work that you would typically see of prosecutors who are career and even some that are appointed. If they have disagreements about the likelihood of getting a conviction, is the evidence sufficient to support an indictment? And all of those decisions, sometimes there are disagreements. And it is our understanding there was a memo that outlined why that was not, in his judgment, the correct course of action. He then leaves that position. The president says he wants the urgent help of one of his friends and someone who had represented him in some of the legal matters that he's been dealing with. She's now in that position and would have the responsibility to try to bring this through her staff and the team there, bring that forward to consideration of a grand jury seated in Virginia. And again, we don't know what happened behind closed doors. We don't know specifically what evidence was presented, but now an indictment with these 2 counts has apparently been returned. Part of what you also see is a lot of public discussion from top officials in this administration about their commitment to going after perceived political enemies of the president, those in past administrations that they argue are corrupt. And there is a jury pool out there that will ultimately have to be considered. And so one of the balances that this administration will want to strike, but not always in an obvious way, is to be careful about what happens with the jury pool. So the president has put in one of his choices. Clearly, she has been able to take action. And again, we have to remember that citizens who reviewed this evidence were willing to bring forward an indictment. That's a long way from actually getting it to trial and potential for conviction, and much could happen between now and then.
All right, Kelly,
what a remarkable series of events.
That is true, Kelly. I want you to stand by for us. If you're just tuning in right now, we are following some breaking news right now. Former FBI Director James Comey has just been indicted on 2 counts. I want to put up for our viewers now quite the statement that's just been put out by the FBI Director, Kash Patel. Let's put it up for our viewers. Here's what he writes. Today, your FBI took another step in its promise of full accountability. For far too long, previous corrupt leadership and their enablers weaponized federal law enforcement, damaging once proud institutions and severely eroding public trust. Every day we continue to fight to earn that trust back, and under my leadership, this FBI will confront the problem head on. Nowhere was the politicization of law enforcement more blatant than during the Russiagate hoax, a disgraceful chapter in history. We'll continue to investigate and expose everyone, especially those in positions of power, will be held to account no matter this perch. No one is above the law. So I want to ask you, Laura, after we see that statement from Kash Patel here, I mean, there might be people within the administration who may or may not want scores to be settled, but that's not the way the Justice Department works. They will have to follow the evidence, and there will be trials, and there will be evidence looked at.
There will be a jury. There will be a judge. Those are the gatekeepers in our criminal justice system. Also, we should mention Justice Department attorneys have an obligation, an ethical obligation, not to bring charges that they don't think are justified, that they don't think are backed by evidence, Tom. And the Justice Department manual actually says if you don't think that you can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, right? If you don't think you actually have the evidence to marshal that, you are not supposed to bring that prosecution. And so it'll be interesting to see, once we actually see the physical indictment, the piece of paper, who signs that indictment? Is that signed by his former personal defense attorney, Lindsay Halligan? Is it signed by the Attorney General? We've seen cases before where they went down the line trying to find a prosecutor who would sign on to this. And it's one of the things I'm going to be looking for to see who actually signs this.
We're going to go to Gabe Gutierrez in a second, but I do want to ask you, there is that famous quote, you can indict a ham sandwich. So there could be a very good chance here that this moves from the process where it is right now.
Yeah, and absolutely. Again, the standard is different, right? All you need is probable cause that a crime has been committed, a reasonable likelihood, whereas the standard in a criminal case to get a jury to convict is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a higher standard of proof, and the jury has to be convinced that there was an actual crime committed. So we'll see more details, obviously, in the indictment about what they have.
Let's go to Gabe Gutierrez. He's live for us tonight outside the White House. Gabe, the president was asked about this today. What did he say?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. And look, we've been asking the White House for a reaction since news of this indictment came down. They're referring all questions to the Department of Justice, but they are also referring us to those statements, those comments that the president made just a short time ago in the Oval Office. Let's listen.
They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
So the president was asked about that earlier today in the Oval Office when he met with Turkey's president. Just 2 hours ago, he was asked once again. He said he couldn't comment. And Tom, in the Oval Office about 2 hours ago was the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. She, at the time, said she could not comment. So it speaks to the fast-moving developments here that this just unfolded over the last several hours. And, of course, this comes with this long history between James Comey and Donald Trump. And, look, he was a controversial figure, Tom, not just for for Republicans, but also for Democrats. He reopened that email investigation for Hillary Clinton back before the 2016 presidential election, only to clear her days later. But this is something that we've been hearing of the administration, that they feel that this is not political retribution, Tom. I asked Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier this week about that idea that critics say that the president wants to go after his enemies. She is trying to frame this as not about retribution, but rather accountability, Tom.
Yeah, but Gabe, you don't even have to go back to the first term. You can go back to just, I think, last week with that post from the president about Pam Bondi and putting pressure on her to go after his political enemies, correct?
Certainly. Look, it was a very interesting dynamic. The president posting on social media over the weekend that he seemed to be frustrated with the pace of the Justice Department going after several investigations, including not just James Comey, but also the New York Attorney General, Democrat Letitia James, and also Senator Adam Schiff. The president seeming to be frustrated with the pace of those investigations, and yet just a day or two later, he came out and threw his support behind Pam Bondi. So it appears that over the last several days, there has been increase of the tempo here to try and get to this indictment, especially, as you mentioned, with the statute of limitations running out next week, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez for us. Laura, I want to come back to you. You know, there will be people who are watching this who will think if James Comey did something wrong, he's being indicted, he will be tried, he will get his day in court. If that stuff comes out, then he should be punished. But that process will play out. What's next for James Comey?
Yeah, that process will play out. He will get a defense attorney, and likely a very good one, given his past and what he can afford, whereas he did not have a defense attorney giving his side to that grand jury. As I've mentioned, it's a secretive process. It's done by prosecutors. Now his defense attorney will get all the discovery. Whatever went in front of that grand jury, his defense attorneys will be entitled to. They will file motions in front of the judge trying to get the case tossed out. Likely the first motion, Tom, that's going to be in front of that judge is that this is a political prosecution, and he's going to marshal all of the tweets, all of the posts, all of the public statements made by everyone in this administration likely to go into that motion before a judge to say this should be tossed out before it even gets to a jury for trial.
I think we're getting some statements or comments from the Department of Justice. I want to go back to Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, what can you tell our viewers?
Well, they've put it in press release form, and it is very Trumpian in the sense that it includes not only the official discussion of the charges, but also sort of reflecting the tweets that we've just seen. What it goes on to tell us is that the indictment alleges that Comey obstructed a congressional investigation into disclosure of sensitive information, and that it also says that he made a false statement in violation of the U.S. Code, and that he did not authorize someone at the FBI to be an anonymous source. And that's according to the indictment, that statement was false. And then it repeats what we have seen from tweets with the posts on social media from Pam Bondi and so forth. And then very tellingly, it says at the end, an indictment is merely an allegation. All defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. So what they've done here is they've combined the very modern moment of social media posts into a statement and then given us a little insight into the specific counts. It gives you the code in the U.S. Penal Code as well. I won't bother with that. But obstruction of the congressional inquiry, false statements. Effectively, in common speak, he was asked by Senator Cruz if he had authorized someone at the FBI to leak to the media. Comey, who again was FBI director at the time these events occurred, said he did not. He said he stood by his testimony that he did not. They presented evidence to a grand jury, and they found otherwise. Obstruction of that inquiry and false statements. Testifying before Congress is always with the penalty of false statement. Certainly, these are counts where it also really requires an understanding of what was in the mind of the person. When you're talking false statements, is there an intent to give knowingly false information? All of those things will be a part of what will likely be a long and challenging process of next steps. We, of course, await to hear what Mr. Comey, who himself, of course, is an attorney, was a high-level official at the Department of Justice, as well as being FBI director. He was the head of one of the most prominent offices, the Southern District of New York. And, of course, had direct interactions with President Trump early in Trump 1, the 45th presidency. And you remember the loyalty test question that Comey testified about, that President Trump then had asked for his loyalty. Comey talked about loyalty to the Constitution, not to one person. Been a lot of miles since then, Tom, but this is a remarkable set of events.
Yeah, and it was one of the first exits in that first administration with Jeff Sessions, then the Attorney General, who recused himself from the Russia probe, and that led to his ousting. Laura, I do want to ask you, some people at home may be watching this and asking, is there anything legal or illegal with the actual leak if he is investigated for that as well? Because we're talking about talking to Congress, it's obstruction, it's lying to Congress, but what about the actual leak?
It depends on what it is. It depends on if it was classified information. The director has the ability to authorize interactions with the media in a way that other lower-level employees at the FBI does not have that type of discretion. But we should help people understand this is a far cry from what the president has accused James Comey of. If, in fact, he's being indicted for these 2 counts, they're serious, they're federal charges, but this is not sort of the widespread corruption that the president has accused Comey and other members of the FBI for. And so it'll be interesting to see whether this actually pacifies the president's demands or whether the president believes actually more should even be done here.
How fast does it move from now? And we only have a few seconds left here.
It'll be completely up to the judge to whether go fast on this and whether the judge agrees that it should be dismissed, which I imagine Comey will be moving for quite quickly. Okay, a lot happening here. Laura and Kelly, we appreciate all your reporting. Again, if you were watching, former FBI Director James Comey has just been indicted. We're going to continue to follow this story. That concludes this NBC News Special Report. We're going to have much more ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online always at NBCnews.com. I'm Tom Yamas here in New York. We now are going to return to our regular programming.